Hi, it's Henry Hollander here for Der Nister Downtown Los Angeles Jewish Center in far away from Los Angeles today. I'm in South Deerfield, Massachusetts, and I'm here to interview and speak to my old friend and fellow Jewish bookseller, Ken Schoen, at the living room above his bookstore in the old firehouse. And this is it's a standalone thing, but also it's part of a larger project of doing oral histories of Jewish booksellers, which hopefully will be something that the Association of Jewish Libraries will be able to take advantage of. And so, Ken, I talk to you on the phone all the time when I'm a good citizen, or I actually answer your emails sometimes. You're better at it than I am, and you're always telling me. So like, are you selling anything to libraries? And I say not so much, and you're like, me too, and I know you're not happy about it. And yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm not happy about the amount of stuff I sell to libraries either. But what do we learn from this? We learned from this that you used to sell a lot of stuff to libraries, and we learned from this that it made you happy. So, how did you like get to the point where that was actually something that you were doing that was like a big part of your life?
I started out my apprenticeship back in 1986. I was fortunate to be asked to manage the book department of Krauss Reprint and Periodicals, which was a major book company. And they had an antiquarian book department. And they'd closed the company and sold the company, and they wanted to revive it. And so they said to me, if the guy who was running it said, if you can bring in a collection and sell it, we sell it, you're hired. I said, all right, I'll try. So a local library here in Northampton was weeding out a whole collection of books, religious books. Interesting material. So I approached them and I made a deal with them and brought maybe 3,000, 4,000 books to Krauss, and we sold the collection to the Japanese. Believe it or not, no, it wasn't the Japanese, whatever. We sold the collection. It was an American book dealer. Okay? And they hired me. That was it. I could prove that we could build collections. So I began working for Krauss for 4 years, building subject collections. Margaret Mead's library was sold. I bought it at auction, a good piece of it. The Japanese libraries at that point loved famous people's libraries. So we packaged it and sold them Margaret Mead's library, a piece of it. And other people of that level I tried to find. I built a Latin American collection, a business collection. So I really got into the idea of building collections for libraries in Japan. We dealt with the Japanese dealers who then sold it to the libraries. There was middlemen always.
Well, that was how the Japanese market worked. You never sold to Japanese customers in those days.
Right. The book dealers marketed the product. So that was wonderful. And that's how I was trained. And I thought, oh, I could do this. I'll build collections. And toward the end of my time there, in 1990, I began to focus on Judaica and books on the Holocaust. It just seemed natural to me to work in that area. And then Krauss began to downsize, and they gave me notice. In 6 months, we're closing your department. And ultimately, they closed mine, they closed Reprint, they closed Periodic. It was just done. They said, take what you want for books. Take it. So I took, and I started with an office in East Hampton. And in the beginning, I would make lists, typing lists, book by book, $5, $10, $15. And I'd send out 40, 50 catalogs to all the major Judaical libraries in this country and overseas. Just sending out lists, finding out who the people were.
So would you mimeograph them?
I mimeographed them, yes, that was the beginning. So I must have done about 75 to 100 catalogs, all mimeographed, and shipped them out. And different subjects. Sometimes I would go out and buy a collection, a library. Professor would retire. or would pass on. I'd get called. I'd go to the home and buy 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 books at a time. In those days, you could do that. And then you'd weed them out and whatever. And so but in the beginning, I just sold book by book by book, and then began to try to build collections. But my major market in making lists was always the college libraries or scholars. That's who I appealed to, and I wanted that market. I wanted those people. And you formed relationships with these librarians. And they'd say, oh, I'm looking to build Vienna in the 1920s. What do you got? I'm looking for Weimar, Germany. Can you give me material on Nazism? Whatever, but that was, or Emancipation period in Jewish. What do you got? Also, I would just make lists of books, Judaica, lists of books, German Judaica, French Judaica, Hebraica. I didn't do that much in Yiddish because the Yiddish Book Center really does that, and they're 15 minutes away from me.
Yes, they're a little too close.
They're a rather major provider of Yiddish books. I'm, more of a modest, shall we say, operation. But
Well,
my great love was...
I did Yiddish books, but from California, so it was different.
This is true. And that's really one of your areas of great specialty is
Yeah,
Yiddish books. Yeah. So German Judaica became a great interest. And that was stirred because of my parents getting out of Germany and being surrounded by German, Jewish material, and that became an interest. So I did sell for some time material to university libraries in Germany that were buying. But as you were saying, it's changed. There are not that many more libraries that are really buying retrospectively, who are looking to fill gaps, to build their collection, to be comprehensive. They don't need to anymore because it's digital. Everything has become digital, and they say, we got what we need. Why should we have to fill that book, that book? So it's changed in the last 10 years. I started in 1990, and I would say from 90 till about, what are we now, to about 2010, 15, great. It's a great time. Even before that, but it was a great time because the libraries were still building their collections. And you would sell 30, 40, 50 at a time. They'd go through the list. We want it. And they were funded either through the state or through a philanthropist or the college.
They would actually look at the list.
They would go through every book. They would look at it, yeah. And you had to sometimes really describe the book, why it's significant. Sometimes the librarian wouldn't really know. That was part of the relationship. And they would trust you when you said, I think you should buy this book because it's really important to your... They would say, okay, we'll go for it. So, but it's changed now considerably. So besides doing lists, which I still send out by email, I still do that. It's a labor of love. I have mostly individual customers through the book sites. A-Books, Biblios, where I list my books. So I sell individual titles often. That's how it is today. So it's changed. The libraries are going digital. Not only that, the library...
And you have your website.
And my website. And the libraries are doing this with the books. They're kind of removing them from the libraries. They're either putting them underground, or they're just feeling we don't need the books anymore. Let's use the space for other purposes. More of a social gathering, or computers. That's my understanding of what's going on.
Well, before I came back here, I was walking around Hampshire College with Miriam Heike Siegel, who went to Hampshire College, and she did work study in the library. So we went into the library, and we talked to one of the guys who worked there, and he said, she said, oh, I worked over there in technical processing. And he said, we don't have that anymore. We have that elsewhere in the I don't know what they call the group of 5 libraries.
Consortium.
Consortium. Yeah. And there are only 11 librarians still working here. And
in the whole thing.
Yeah, in the whole thing. So she was, and she's younger than we are.
Yeah. Yeah. To be a librarian nowadays, I'm wondering if you need to have a tremendous background in the subject matter like Judaica or the Shoah or whatever, or is the electronic ability and the librarianship the significant thing? Like really knowing reference in terms of computers and retrieving information.
Well, we were talking about this, and she has an MLS, and now you really need an MLS. But MLS is kind of Masters of Library Science. It's a prerequisite, but a lot of it is about information technology. And we were talking about, at one point I was thinking maybe I wanted to become a librarian, do an MLS. And she said, well, now you could, I'm in rabbinical school, so she's like, well, as a rabbi, they would hire you as a subject specialist without an MLS. So those jobs have kind of like moved apart. The real library professionals, career in libraries, they're more information than they are actually oriented around knowing the specific books.
The other sad piece, which comes to mind, is the small Jewish libraries and synagogues. Occasionally I would help them. I'd just give them books to build their libraries, different synagogues. Now what's happened is the synagogue libraries are closing because they're not being used. And so the synagogues call me up and say, people are bringing me books. We're not accepting books. Would you like to have them? Would you like them? And people are bringing me books now. Rabbis and so forth, because there's no market. They say, and I say, I will take them. I will take them. Give me your tired, your hungry, your books. I will take them because I have book sales for tzedakah. We do that. So I put them out out in front of the building, and I get a whole bunch of people, and I've raised some money that way. But I have a limited space here too. We all have that issue. There's just so many books you can take in. Now the other part of it is I consider my building now to be partly a geniza.
That can be a problem if you get into that.
Well, I'm wondering, in terms of the future, what the nature of the book will be, and this will be a repository potentially if after I'm gone this continued. That's another story.
A repository could be a living thing or a dead thing.
Right.
You got to make sure that it's a living thing and not a dead thing.
Exactly. Right. Yes. It's a big concern. Yeah. The future of the book and the future of my books. There must be about 10,000 books here, which take up. And they're all waiting. They're all.
I don't know. I looked downstairs. I have bad news for you. I think your number is low.
You think it's more?
I think you got more than 15,000.
More than 15,000. All right, folks, they're waiting. Come on by. Go through the shelves. Go through the aisles. Prices are reasonable. No, but I'm serious. I'd like to find homes for these books too. That's the issue now.
Yeah. Well.
Well, you know what I.
That's.
Yeah. Go ahead.
That's kind of the important thing. At certain points you're like, I need to make money, and at other times it's like, I need to get these books where they need to go.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
by any means necessary.
Yeah, I got into this because I myself, I would say after college, even before, I was a bibliomaniac. I would run to bookstores all over the city of New York, wherever, and just get.
When there were still
there were lots of bookstores
all over the city of New York.
And I would buy and bring them home and read them and collect them and have them. I just felt wonderful being surrounded by books, having them as companions, so to speak. That's how I started. And then when I was offered, I graduated, I became a school teacher for 4 years in ghetto schools. Did that, then I became a social worker, working with kids in troubled kids. And then at Ganuk, it was time. And I was
How many years did you do?
I did social work about 15 years, had an MSW, did that. And I did school teaching 4 years. I also taught high school equivalency, other stuff. But
so you did all the social work was all with kids?
Basically, yeah, basically.
Like teenagers?
I worked with a shelter for runaway teenagers for 4 years. That was in here in Amherst, did that. And then I worked with troubled kids at a clinic. And then I worked with kids we still do, autistic kids, schizophrenic kids. They used to call them schizophrenic kids. place called Blueberry. I worked there for 3 years, running a residence for the kids in a summer camp. And it was wonderful work. And leaving social work was a dilemma because part of my identity was tied into like doing this work. But what happened was I was able to transfer it into the books because I began to feel, well, this is sacred work. What I'm doing is really important. I'm finding or rescuing books and finding homes for them.
Well, there's a difference. There's a difference, you know, when you were at Krauss, and when you were doing stuff for yourself. There's like an organized sense of like this is like a specific subject. Like I'm really getting into this, and the person who I'm dealing with has a serious interest. So then it's easier to see that as a vocation than you know, someone who just has like a paperback exchange who is trying to, you know, make money, and you know the books are, you know, this business is divided into you know the people who care about the books and the people who care about the money. There are some people who care about both, but a lot of times, you know how it is.
Well, this is part of the dilemma for us as book dealers, is that you have what I call book mills. You have these big corporate structures that are getting the books for nothing somehow, really for nothing. Maybe they have a nonprofit piece to them. And then they put them online for $2, $3, $4, and $2 shipping. The books that I would normally have priced at $15, they're scholarly books, but they don't describe the book. It may have this, they're just taking the ISBN. So the book sites are filled with these book mills, and so people say, okay, I'd rather buy the book.
Well, why don't you tell people like what their descriptions of the books sound like?
May have this, maybe X library, may have the, you know, it's all spurious. You don't know what the book is really like.
May be lacking CD-ROM.
Oh yeah, right. Maybe,
it's
yeah.
Like...
It's because they're just taking the ISBN and putting it up online. But people those who are buying I'd rather spend $3 than spend $10 and support, you know, people who are doing this as a profession, so to speak. Okay, that's part of the modern times we live in. We're up against that. Yeah.
I mean, for me, I've responded to that by really pushing into the specialization, and having a sense of like these are books that'll show up that the book mills will have, and trying to stay away from that material, and really sticking to the stuff that I really care about, to stuff that has a greater value. You know, if they push the books down to nothing,
right?
Why bother? And you know, it's kind of a shanda, but you know, you do a better job of giving away books. You're like you really work hard. You're generous. You're a generous person, and you like try to place it. But I don't have as much time, and maybe I'm just not as nice a guy. But I recycle a lot of stuff that has a low value on the theory. If I do it long enough, there won't be that many of them, and people will actually be, the number of people who actually care will be more in line with the number of copies of the book that are out there on the market. But like I said, you're a better person than I am.
Well, that's very kind of you. The other thing about the business for me is I don't mind buying ex-library copies of books. That's another piece. I will go into a library that's weeding out and the books are marked, because if the book is of interest to me or interest to the scholar, and there may be few copies, I'll buy it, because the scholar doesn't care if the dust jacket is pristine, no markings. Well, you know, they want the book. So a lot of my books over time have been ex-library. That's just how it is. I also want to speak about the pleasure, which I'm sure you've experienced, of going into of buying libraries. That's one of the joys of this business, is you go into, you know, you get called and you go into a home, you don't know what you're going to find. Sometimes it's dreadful, it can be really like schlock. And sometimes it's like, oh my God, a copy of this or a copy, this is phenomenal. So it's a very exciting, it's a mystery, it's an unknown thing. You're going into this threshold, into this new, place, and who knows what you're going to find. So that's one of the, I went into a library last week. A scholar had passed away and his widow called me, and I went and got a fair number of books, a lot dealing with Vienna in the 1900s, in English, 1920s, 1930s, Weimar Germany, but all that, wonderful. And then other books that are outside my area, but interesting books of scholarship. Took them also, why not? But you meet some wonderful people in doing this work. Part of the sadness is when you're going to buy a library, as you know, is you're dealing with death or divorce, or transitions. People are moving. They've got 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 books, and they're going into some place where they can only take 500. And it's
I'll tell you the most.
It's a mourning.
The most extreme example. I had a call from this woman. She wanted to send me her father's Yiddish books, because she had to move, and I said to her, well, when did your father die? And she said, 1965. This was about 10 years ago. So she had been storing these books of her father's for over 40 years, and she was going into an assisted living facility for herself, and she needed to actually deal with it. But when you buy these collections, you get in this odd indirect way, you get all this information about this person, right. and you end up just without the intention even doing detective work on who it is. You had a book you were very excited about.
Yeah, but I wanted to say on this, part of the process is often the people are mourning. They're mourning the loss of the library, the loss of the significance, what these books have meant to them. They're giving it up. They're letting it go. And that letting go process, part of what we all go through in life is letting go.
Or letting go of a relationship with someone else.
That's true too, yeah. So there's a real mourning. So one has to be very sensitive to what's going on for people. And I often say to them, have you had your children or people go through these books to take what's important to them? Because I don't want to hear later, oh, I really wanted that book. Oh, I wanted that book, which happens. I wanted them to go through it, before I come, make sure books, and it can happen where books come to me that are family things, and I'll send them back, of course. Yeah. But I'm going to tell you a story that I mentioned. So I was out at a library out in Great Neck, and the parents had died. They were refugees from Germany. And I'm there with my late wife, Jane Trigere, and we're going through the library. She's entertaining the daughter of these people in Great Neck, and while
Jane is a whole story.
Right.
It's a big story, and we're not going to tell the whole story today, but it's a whole story, and one day we will get to that story.
Okay, right. So Jane's family was in the fashion business. Her father, Robert Trigere, also known as Sioma, and her aunt Pauline Trigere were in the fashion world. Okay, so we buy the books and we come out of there and we bring them home. And one of the things I love to do when I get home is to start looking at the books. Oh, just go through the books right away. So I'm going through the books, and then I pull out this one book, and I'm looking at it, and it's Louise de Villemorin, Madame de. Okay, whatever. And then I go to the free end paper. I look at the opening. It says, "À Madame Valdez, bon voyage, avec Clément Robert Trigere." It's signed by Jane's father to this woman's mother. I start yelling. I said, "Jane, you're not going to believe this. Here's a book that's in the library that your father gave them 20, 30 years ago as a gift," because her father loved to give people books. The Snow Goose by Gallico. He gave hundreds of, it's literally hundreds. But he loves to give books away. So then we got home and I called the woman up. I said, what's the story here? How come you, what's the connection to the Trigers? And she didn't have a clue. So then she said, well, we were in the snap business. I said, oh, and they were in the fashion. So then we were able to find the name of the company, which was Valdez Kohinoor out of Germany. And so we actually got from another friend this snap thing, which was that. So we made the connection. So they were friends, and her father had given them books. And that happened a couple of times, similar situations where you find books that, it's amazing how books circulate and the stories that are around books. So that was just quite incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had books that had stories in them that I knew too much about the story, then I couldn't sell the book, and not because necessarily like I couldn't sell it because I needed to, because like I had to have it. It was like, oh, this is like private stuff. I can't let this book go out into the world.
Are you suggesting the book was salacious or something about the material or what?
Well, in the particular example I'm thinking of, there were two historians, both of whom I knew, and the book had one of them saying really nasty things about the other one.
In the book?
Yeah.
Oh, no annotations and underlining and comments.
Yeah, yeah, like a lot, not a little, a lot. And I just, it's like, oh, that's not okay. I need to like hold on to this. I think maybe I'll give it to a library with like a this
30 years.
This
30
is under
years.
wraps for 30 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Once again, you see, your story is nicer than mine. It's like nice people, bad
But it's
people.
true. You do find books in libraries that are like, what is that book doing in that? The kinds of stuff people read. They should be aware that when they're gone, their library is open. And, someone's going to be going through your library and learning a lot about you from the books that you have selected.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I have taken out the pictures which were inappropriate for sharing from
Exactly.
from certain collections.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, how did you, as a kid, as a young person, get to the point where you were a bibliomaniac? I mean, that doesn't like. Well, maybe it does start. Maybe it does start on one day.
Well, I think I had very few books in my parents' home. My father was in the coffee business. He had a small coffee company. He roasted, blended it, and delivered it to restaurants in New York City. Never had a book, maybe one book on coffee. But he didn't read books. He read the newspaper when he came home, and that was the extent of it. My mother, pretty much the same. She was a pianist, in Germany, trained. But when she came over here, she worked in business to make a living. She couldn't make it. But neither of them were into books.
Did she have a piano?
Oh, we had a piano grand and upright. Oh, she,
Okay,
yeah, she really,
all right.
oh yeah.
Just checking.
Yeah. And my sister trained to be a pianist too. Same deal. But anyway, and I remember as a kid, the Hardy Boys. I mean, I would go through books just under the covers with a flashlight.
Which Hardy Boys?
Which ones? The Dixon series.
The old
The old
Hardy
one,
Boys?
Franklin Dixon one, the originals. Yeah, yeah. And I was really into mysteries then. I'm into mysteries now. That's my pleasure, mysteries. Yeah. I don't know what. I think it was after college, when I was living in Brooklyn. There were some bookstores, and then I was living in the city. But the problem is I just developed it. I love to read. I love to let your mind go. I was never into the movies that much, and all that. It was like just to read and use your imagination and learn.
What is the thing? What is the thing with marked books? Mortimer Adler, the great books.
Yeah.
I read this book that he has, How to Read a Book.
Yeah.
Have you read that?
No.
You never read that?
No.
Oh.
Give me a synopsis.
He has this very, very methodical process for how to seriously read a book, and part of it is you write in the book. And so I read this book, and it just like gave me heart palpitations. 'Cause
Yeah.
he's like, you gotta write all over the book, like write make these notes, underline this, and all of that. And I always wondered like where all these books came from that people wrote in. And it's like
Mortimer Adler.
it's Mortimer Adler. Blame it on this
I'll
guy.
tell you, unless the person's famous or well known, you want his notes and annotations and all that. You want that. How are you thinking? How are you developing? Otherwise, for me when I catalog a book, I have to make sure I describe if there's any underlining, because that's the one question customers ask me. Are there any annotations, any underlining? And if there is, they don't want the book often because they want to do the underlining, I guess.
I actually had a book. I bought Scholar Herbert Davison's library after he passed away. And there was one book, it was a great book, but he had written a lot of notes in it. And I was just like, I can't go through and like erase his notes. These are like really good notes. He was like correcting the Arabic. Like he's a serious scholar. And I did sell the book. But I had this long conversation about the book with the customer, and I said to him, normally I don't sell books like this. It's like, it's not okay. I really don't like books with underlining or with notes in it. But this is added value.
It enhances the book.
This book is actually better. So like I'm selling this to you, and you should look at the notes in the book.
The other thing that's related to that is how much people want books that are signed by the author, inscribed. That seems quite significant to people.
Doesn't do anything for you?
I mean, I guess on one level it's like, oh, Goethe was there and he signed this book. Wow. Or Franklin Roosevelt or Herzl or whatever. It's his signature. It's wonderful. Does it excite you? I guess so. You've had books like that.
Some of the time. Obviously, I have a different relationship to you, to the books than that. Sometimes it does really like offer you some information about the book. When you're handling similar books over and over again.
Yeah.
Like this book is always signed by the author.
I've noticed that too, all the time. Self-published.
This book always signed. Isabel Allende signed tons of books, and she always drew a little flower, like the kind of flower that a preschooler would draw. Mm-hmm. All the petals perfectly in place, just looks like that. And I saw one of her books, and it was signed, and it didn't have the little flower. And I was like, I don't think this is a real signature.
Oh, I had that issue with a David Ben Gurion book. He went up in value, his signature, big time. It was like they were selling his Birth of Israel, whatever it was. I think it was Birth of Israel, whatever the book was, signed by him. It was going for like $750, $1,000, $1,250 for this, just because it was. Normally, it's a $25 book.
But it's a deluxe edition.
That's right. It wasn't one of something, but I didn't create that market to make it $750. Some book dealer out there put that value on, and somehow that became the value. Right? AA First Editions, Alcoholics Anonymous. Remember what happened with that?
That was one dealer.
One dealer. It became like what, thousands of dollars, right?
Yeah.
It was like, what's that about?
I remember asking that question of other dealers. I didn't understand.
Well, that's another point now. How do we determine value for a book? Why is that a $10 book or a $40 book or a $100 book? Besides rarity and scarcity, in a scholarly edition.
Well, see, now you see, with the more common books, the market does kind of set the price. The book mills they're pushing so many books through the market.
Yeah.
That they, really is kind of fair at a certain level. Like if all the copies were the same, the problem is with the descriptions. But it's like it's actually created. It's devastating to specialists because
Right.
you used to scout for books, right?
Right.
You would go into other people's
Oh,
stores.
you'd find Hebrew books. You'd find all kinds of stuff. They didn't know what they had. It was great. In German, whatever. Gone. Now they price that book, which was $5, $10 for $100. Whatever.
If that's the price that they found
Find
online.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no sense of like it used to be that you judge where you were in the market.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm this place in the market, these are my prices. If I'm this place in the market, these are my prices.
Right.
It was
right.
based on, it was like you had your customers. You didn't have all the customers in the world. You had your customers.
The other thing that I've noticed is that there's a book that I would price at $30, and there are not many copies. The next copy is $150 for a good scholarly book. And I'm thinking, or $300. How'd they come up with that price? It's a $30 book.
Yeah.
How? An algorithm. It's all they've got these programs. So the book is a commodity. It's an object. It's no longer a book that you want to sell because that's a good book to sell and someone should buy it for a reasonable price. So I'm still putting a book up for $30 or $40 that they're putting up for $200. Now, I don't know if that's going to lower their $200, that their algorithm is going to see that. I doubt it.
It depends. It depends. If you put it up on Amazon,
I don't do Amazon.
I know, but if you put it up on Amazon, their algorithms are going to come for that $200 price.
They are?
I didn't experiment.
Yeah.
I'm talking too much. This is, I had a book, Assyrian Medical Texts. It was a reprint. It might have been a Krauss reprint.
Yeah.
And I was used to selling it for $75, and I got 10 copies. So, I want to sell them, and I went and looked up the prices, and the only copy available was one on Amazon for $750. So I listed my copy for $749.
Did you really?
99 cents, and I would go back and check what the price was periodically, and they would always, whenever I went back, their price would be lower than mine. So then I would lower my price, and then their price would get lower, and then their price would get lower, and I think I finally sold a copy for $57. And their price was that day was maybe like $58.
Unreal.
It was the same people. It was the same
Right.
copy.
Yeah.
And I was paying attention. They probably never actually no human being.
It became like
was
a game.
involved.
It became a game for you. It was a game.
Oh,
Yeah, it
absolutely,
was a game.
absolutely.
Outgame them. Yeah.
It was like 6 months. So yeah, I mean, like the satisfaction is important to you.
Yes. Yeah. The other thing I'm thinking about as we're talking is in terms of the future and future readers, and we're talking to Judaical librarians, you'd like to talk to them, is how do we get young readers and older to come back to the book, to value the book, and not look at the computer and read everything on the computer and think it's all digital and go to Google and get the answers immediately, but to be compelled to think and to read and to use the imagination. Because I don't know how much the book is being, I guess one could say in day schools or rabbinical, they're using Talmud, they're reading, but they're also doing digitally, right? Are you using books or digital in your studies?
I was in my Talmud class last Thursday and studying with Aryeh Cohen. Mm-hmm. And Aryeh Cohen had like a new version of the Talmud Masechet in front of him, and I had a Vilna Shas
Uh-huh.
from the 1890s,
Right.
because that's what I have. I have that in front of me. It's like a gigantic thing, and then there are 10 other people who are looking at a computer.
And they're doing Safaria. They're doing one of these sites that can give them everything.
I think they were doing Safaria, but I was trying to be hardcore with
Actual.
my Vilna Shas with no English translation.
Uh-huh.
Um,
So how does one create a campaign to bring back to bring back the book as an entity? That's what we're talking about in a way, to bring it to the future.
yeah,
That's
there has to be a certain educational component.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. I think a lot of young people actually are coming back to books because they realize that they enjoy the physicality of them, and I mean, I think, and there's actually clinical studies of this, that reading online versus reading on paper, the retention on paper is about 10% better.
Uh-huh.
Which is, I mean, you think about it, it's like, oh, 10%, what's 10%? But, I definitely feel like I'm not smart enough. So if I could be 10% smarter,
More,
that would be Machaya, that would be great. And that, if you think like that.
There is a pleasure in holding the book and reading the book and looking at the text and looking how it's laid out and feeling the book and holding it. I mean, one of the joys of being a book dealer is as you're going through the book, you're kind of going through the chapter a little bit and reading some of it and getting to know the author a little bit. It's the beauty of it. But a book, physical book, is so different than a screen.
Yeah. Well, why don't you say something about that particular
so-
book, because it goes in this direction of of the physical book and that kind of pleasure.
So Carl Cesar was a person I knew from Schoen, and remarkable guy. He became fluent in Chinese and Japanese through the language school during the Korean War, and had studied Latin in Brooklyn. He was fluent in Latin. He did his service, and then he got a doctorate, and he was teaching at Wesleyan. Then he moved on, and then he moved up to the Valley, and was a local character. He was in the theater. He was a writer, a poet, just a local guy, and very outspoken in Shul. He was very pro-Zionist, and you knew where he was. He spoke his piece. This is a guy who died this year at the age of like 88, and very vibrant just about till the end. And I was one of his people and took care of him and took care of his estate. And so I got a lot of copies of his book. He translated Catullus, Tokuboku, and then he wrote his own book called Hay. And he stamped every page. He created a stamp, and then each page was stamped by an individual stamp, page by page by page. And they were all his thoughts, his philosophy. This is just words, but it's something I did. We're finished for good, but I still wish we were. It's just his thoughts. Anyway, so he did about 1,000 copies of this book, hand stamped, and then it was zero. It was copied, the original and then copied. And it's hard to market a book. So he marketed some, and then I got the rest, and I've been sending them out to people because people love his writing. It's like Zen. It's like a koan.
Yeah.
It's Zen writing, like his Tokuboku book translation. And his Catullus never got the appreciation it should have. An example, because he translated Catullus in the original, really like scandalous stuff. And the Latin establishment did not like that very much. They wanted it very clean and pure. So he was kind of kicked out of the system for that. He was...
How old was he when he did that?
Catullus, maybe 1980s, 70s or 80s.
Oh.
In the 70s or 80s. Yeah, he was... No. Yeah, he was banished. He wasn't even reviewed. It was so scandalous, the Catullus, but it's pretty remarkable. Anyway, so part of the joy of this work is the people you meet. You know, it's like a lot of characters, and just great people. And Carl was one of them. So.
Well, you have a lot of local associations. I'm really impressed with how many people you're talking to in any given day.
The other thing that talking was that one of the outgrowths of this, of being a Judaica book dealer, was we set up a Jewish Historical Society. Should mention that. So back in the 70s or the 90s, a lot of the synagogues closed in Springfield and merged. 4 became 1.
That's
and 2 became 1. 2 conservative became 1 conservative. 3 or 4 Orthodox became 1. So we rushed down there to get the papers before they tossed them. And we also interviewed a lot of people. We must have done 75 interviews, or 100 interviews, with regular shul goers and the rabbis, and we filmed all the interiors of the shuls. So if you go to our site, jhswm.org, I'm doing a little plug here.
Which stands for?
Jewish Historical Society of Western Massachusetts. You can look at it online. If you go to that site, you can go by Springfield, Northampton, Amherst, Greenfield. You can see all these interviews. People talking about what's going on and all the films of the shuls. That was a great labor of love. I've pretty much not done much of that lately. But that was really during the 90s.
So where is all that stuff now?
Oh, so the American Jewish Historical Society, the Weiner, W-Y-N-E-R Center in Boston, took it all. We had maybe 175 to 100 boxes of material archived. They took it all. And they archived it. So, and they also got the Springfield Jewish paper from 1945 to like 1990. You want to know what happened in Springfield, you go there and you can get it. Because I believe archives are very important. Saving people's papers. Carl's papers, he was important. I got them together. University of Massachusetts, Special Collections, took his papers. Jane's papers, they took.
Yeah, that's definitely.
It's really important. You've come across that.
It's gotten to be more challenging.
Yeah.
To
place stuff.
To place stuff. I mean, what do you do if you're not sure where the stuff needs to go?
And there's a time factor. You're in someone's home and you find the papers. Is that it? Part of it?
Yeah. Well, but my question really is like you have a collection. You have identified in your head this is important, but you're not sure where it's supposed to go. How do you figure it out? Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not. We talked a little bit earlier about the German Judaica, and we talked about the general practice of selling to libraries. But a particular interest of yours was building Holocaust collections, and why don't you talk about some of the significant relationships you had there?
Yeah, when I started out in 1990 on my own, the U.S. Holocaust Museum in Washington was building its library. And I established a relationship with Elizabeth Koenig, who was the first librarian, who was hidden in Le Chambon, wonderful woman. And we established a relationship. I would make lists, she'd go through them, and she'd buy hundreds upon hundreds of books. And she would say to me, "Can you do a little better?" I mean, that's part of the business, by the way. Can't you do a little better? So, okay. So I sold a lot of books to them. And the Holocaust centers were establishing themselves all over the country. And I would sell books to them. And it was tremendous. And my parents got out of Germany. My father came early in 27. My mother got out in 35. And my father and mother got most of their family out. My father rescued 69 people out of Germany, mostly family, some people who wrote him. And he was unable to get his sister out. Yeah, Selma. So that, I only found out about her after my father died. I got a Stammbaum, there's her name, and the family didn't want to talk about it, but finally I learned about her. And then I was contacted by some historians in Germany. She was in a hospital and she went through euthanasia. She was murdered by the Nazis. Okay? She was murdered.
It's an unusual thing for for one of the Jewish victims of the Holocaust.
I don't know about that. You think so? She was in a
well-
mental hospital. They took out all the patients from the hospital.
Well, but yeah, she was
As a
that was as a mental patient rather
yeah,
than
as a Jew. Yes, it was because of her emotional, psychiatric situation, right? And that's why my grandparents, who left in '39, they didn't want to leave her. My father, cut them out, and they said they were concerned about her. They didn't know what would happen to her, and the mayor said he would take care of her. So, anyway, she was murdered. But historians, like about 2 years ago, contacted me. They'd seen my website. On the website, I discussed my family and the history of the towns and all that. And they did all the documentation. They found all the material about her. So I have her picture from the hospital and the records.
Wow.
It was incredible. So I put on the website some of her more of her story. But I left out, a fair amount of the stuff. The psychiatric was not necessary. So my parents' story informed me becoming interested in German Judaica and the Holocaust. That was part of it. And the Holocaust, and there were just...
But did you, like when you were growing up, was that sort of a really present thing, or was
No.
that like we never talked
They
about
never
this?
talked about it. All my parents' friends, I lived in Forest Hills, the whole block were refugees or survivors. And I knew a few who were survivors. They'd been in Auschwitz. I just said, okay, it didn't really penetrate what that meant. And it really didn't. And the guy who was the local butcher, he had a number on his arm. And that was the extent of my knowledge, really. But it was there.
You were like a teenager in the 50s.
I was born in '47, so I'm...
So, okay.
Yeah.
So like because
I wasn't conscious of it. I
well,
was aware
the word
of it.
Holocaust, was not even around until the 60s.
That's right. Later even. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, but it was there. You could feel it in the family in terms of
Did they
dislocation.
Did they speak in the
German?
Were they speaking German all the time?
No, just the opposite. My parents wanted to speak German, and I would say speak English. I guess I wanted to be Americanized. I'm not sure what that was about. My sister grew up in my grandparents' home on West End Avenue, in the city, and her first language was German. She's born in '42. She spoke German with my grandparents. And that's my mother's family. My father's family lived in Washington Heights with the Breuers. They were quite Orthodox.
You would think they would speak German.
Yeah, but they were gone by the time I was born.
Oh,
so I don't know. Yeah, but they all spoke English. I only studied German in college. Yeah, I took an interest. Whereas my son, Seth, became fluent in German. He's been to Germany many times. And he's continued a connection with a family in my mother's hometown that was close to my mother, who brought food to her parents during the 30s under the Nazis. They supported, It's a longer story. It's on my website. But Seth has continued a relationship with the great-grandchildren of these people. It's a wonderful thing. It's continued. So anyway, I would sell to Holocaust centers, and they were buying a lot of books and building their collection. There's still a lot of Holocaust books being produced. People's memoirs, their stories. And I have many of them. And I think the Holocaust centers may have reached their point of we have what we need. There may be that point. Plus the culture's going digital. So there's a lot of media material that's being produced. And interviews, that the Fortunoff did and Yale and Spielberg. That seems to be the direction. Let's look at the interview. Let's hear it rather than, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
But,
well, I mean, that's complicated because a lot of Holocaust survivors, they didn't want to talk about things. When you finally got to the point where these Holocaust survivors were willing to talk about stuff, they were already older. But there was a lot of effort to get Holocaust survivors, once they were willing to actually speak about things,
right.
into the schools to speak to people,
Right.
and then they started dying because they were already old, and there was this, oh no, they're all like they're going to die, and we won't have anyone to bear witness to the kids, and then there are all these projects started to do recordings. Like the Holocaust Center in San Francisco, they started out doing cassette tapes. Like now it's all they like set it up and it's an interview and you can see the person. They started off just the cassette the cassette tapes
Sure.
and the little microphone.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean that's where they started. I don't know. It's I mean, you've lived through different attitudes about the Holocaust. You grew up in one period, and as an adult, it shifted into a different period. And I mean, how do you view what's going on, other than the fact that you're like, oh, it's digital, but like how do you what's your experience talking to people about the Holocaust? Does it feel like you're having different kinds of conversations than you used to have?
In some ways, it's different. It's different because of the situation in the country now, the political situation. I think that's impacted make all these parallels, which we never did before. Oh, it's the 1930s, or it's this, or it's that. Oh, look what's happening now, and the fears and the anti-Semitism. So that's kind of changed the whole kind of conversation about the Holocaust in some ways. It's become like, well, what does it mean about what's going on today? Do we need to be as concerned as people are now? So that's different. I don't recall those conversations back in the 60s or 70s. The conversations in the 60s were civil rights. When I went to college in the 60s, it was, we shall overcome, joining that. And then anti-Vietnam, that was the big thrust. But in terms of the Holocaust, I think that's where it's kind of moved a bit in the conversation, more of a political discussion.
Is that something you're hearing sort of from the Jewish people that you deal with only, or is this like a general cultural thing?
It's mostly from the Jewish people I speak to, yeah. I can't speak for the general culture, except what I read in the newspapers. That's my, or the New York Times, that's my source of information. Or the Jewish Telegraph, or whatever, different Jewish sites that tell me what the tenor of the people is, what their concerns are. So I can only speak to that. So I don't really know what the non-Jewish, except what it's being reported. Yeah.
So we went backwards. Why don't we wrap up talking about the future? Like where do you on a bad day, where do you think things are going? On a good day, where do you think things are going with the
I would
with
say
the Jewish book business?
I would say there are bad days. There are days when I sell no books. Is that a bad day? One could look at it that way.
It depends what you bought that day.
Or what I listed that day, or what's. Yeah, I would say every day, frankly, is a good day. Why? Modani, you get out of bed, you're up, and you do your morning stuff, and then you go, and you're with the books. I'm with my thousands of books. It's a tremendous pleasure. It's just a great, and I've been doing this, for 40 years or whatever, and it's been great.
Yeah, you were already there when I started.
No, you were there, but you
so
were
it's
there
like you could have been there for like 5,000 years before me, and I would have noticed.
No, you started when you were 18 years old. No, with a bookstore.
Well, actually, I did start.
Yeah, I only got into this late.
I started in books.
Yeah.
About the time that you started.
I started in 1986.
In Judaica.
Yeah.
Later.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So
yeah, but
so like when I became aware of who the Jewish book dealers were, you had been there for a while.
We should mention some of them who are like Aaron Lutfak, who are gone. Ideal Books.
Zichron Livracha.
Right. Who else comes to mind?
A tremendous character.
What a force he was, no, in terms of the book world, New York
Yeah,
especially, right?
yeah.
Aaron.
What's his Mashiach?
Oh, he's still around, isn't he? Yeah. He may have passed.
I think he may have recently passed away. He was in Florida.
Yeah. He had a great
was,
shop on like 28th Street in the West Side, way over there.
Well,
Yeah.
like near 10th Avenue.
Yeah, exactly, way west.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have I got a treasure for you? Ugh, this book. This book is just for you. He was great. He was a character. Yeah, I liked him.
Was it? Did Isaac? I think Isaac Mann passed away.
No, he's still around. Isaac's still around. Isaac still does it.
One of the other New York guys passed away.
Yeah.
Passed away not that
Beagle-Eisen, one of the Beagle-Eisens, he was doing it, right? Yeah.
Well, the Beagle-Eisens were different.
Yeah, they're the rabbinics, right?
Yeah,
Right? They were different. That's a whole different world.
They're already multiple generations
of Beagle-Eisens.
So you want to talk about Beagle-Eisen passed away? It's like which Beagle-Eisen?
Yeah, right.
But it's just really not the same. Some people are less active. It's just there are a lot fewer.
I would say in the whole country, how many are there of us that are doing it actively? 8, 6, 8?
Well,
actively in Judaica.
Well, to talk about Jewish booksellers, there's like a difference, because you have these people who are like very specialized, and they sell a certain kind of book to a certain kind of customer.
Yeah, exactly. Very narrow.
But the guys like us who are like the Jewish world, the whole Jewish world is interesting to us, and we want to have books about
the whole thing.
all kinds of it's like
music, art, whatever,
yes,
everything.
Yes, and it's like I really need to build up my section of Hungarian books.
So about good bad days, every day is a good day in a way, because I'm with the books and I'm cataloging and I'm finding new books and I'm exploring them, and just to have the books and be with the books. I mean, I want to make some money at it. That's always the ultimate hope.
Yeah.
But the pleasure of being with the books, and I want to encourage.
The book part is always good, but you got to keep the seller in there.
I know.
They
used to tell me that at Krauss when I worked at Krauss. You got to sell books. You can't just love the book. Sell.
Yeah. It's in the name. It's in the name. It's we're not librarians.
That's true.
We're not.
We are book sellers.
We're not archivists. Well, we're trying not to be archivists.
Yeah.
We'll leave that to the professionals.
Yeah, but I would say we are hoping that a new generation will come and continue the tradition of Judaica book selling, which goes back a long way, no?
Yeah.
Yeah. Continue that tradition. We are looking forward to a new generation, and if there are people who want to come over and, shall we say, learn with me, or be and learn, study and learn the trade, I'd be happy to work with them.
It's a real open offer.
I would certainly teach them things and what it's all about. And I welcome people to come visit the firehouse, if I can make that pitch. That's okay. Yeah, I welcome librarians, individuals. If you're in Western Massachusetts and you're visiting the Yiddish Book Center in Amherst, I'm 15 minutes away, literally.
And he'll feed you.
And I am known to give a good lunch. So if that's the incentive, erst kommt das Essen, dann kommt die Moral. Brecht said that. First comes the sustenance, eating, and then comes the ethics, the morale. So if you got to be fed first, we'll feed you. And then we'll feed you some books. So I welcome visitors coming to the firehouse in South Downtown, beautiful South Deerfield, which is very near to historic Deerfield. So you could make a trip out of it. There you go.
Well, Ken, I hope that the local Chamber of Commerce has enjoyed your audition, and it's really been a pleasure. It's always a
Likewise.
pleasure
Thank you
to
for
talk
doing
to you.
this. This has really been fun. I really appreciate this. Thank you.
I'm glad. I wouldn't want it to be no fun.
Thank you. Henry. Thank you.